Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have a guide for the new Usopp leader, which comes out in OP10 for the One Piece card game. So we're going to go over some cards and example combos for the deck. We're going to go over some example deck lists as well, and we're going to go over a couple games from a recent live stream that I did for testing this leader as well. So if you guys want any resources too, you can check out the description for my website, Eggman Events, and also the full live stream if you guys want to check that out as well. And lastly, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. We're doing a lot of One Piece content here, especially with OP10 coming out in a couple weeks, and you guys don't want to miss it. So jumping on into it, the new Usopp leader, so it is blue and black, which is the third leader to do so. We have Rebecca, which has been pretty kind of controversial in the fact that it is a 5-life leader that can't attack. There's some kind of cool combos you can do with Dressrosa, and honestly, this leader got a bunch of support from this new set too. If you guys want me also to make like a separate video going over Rebecca, I can do my best as well. And then we also have Sakazuki, which this guy got banned for being so good. Blue and black was such a good combination of cards with, cost reduction, and kind of using the blue removal cards with the reduction from black just was a really good combination in its own sense. So that's, why I think a lot of people were excited for it. Houndblaze is a card that Usopp can use too, which we can talk about in a little bit. And Rebecca was still thought about using a lot of the tools that Sakazuki used, but the fact that it wasn't a leader that could attack, and the fact that it didn't have any inherent cost reduction in the leader effect either, did make a big difference. So Usopp's completely different from both these though in that sense though. Your 2 cost and greater Dressrosa type characters get +1 cost, so instead of cost reduction of your opponent's cards, it's cost increase on your own cards, which has been kind of a newer theme we've been seeing in the last couple sets for black in general, which also is important, which we'll go over in a little bit. But also, opponent's turn once per turn, this effect may be activated when one of your Dressrosa type characters are removed from the field by your opponent's effect, or are KO'd. If you have 5 or less cards in your hand, you get to draw 1. So this is a pretty strong effect, the fact that we get all this recursion for our effects. We have a lot of blockers that exist in Usopp too, so being able to play out a blocker and then also block with it, and then it gets removed and you get the card draw, is really, really good. So I think the biggest issue with this is that sometimes we have like a lot of non-counter cards in hand, so it's harder to be at 5 or less cards for this effect. But card draw and card advantage for this game is really important, and it's a pretty desired effect. So this is generally pretty good, and I think a lot of people can take advantage of this effect too. So going on into it, one last thing I want to mention. One, this is recorded at the end of February. We do have a restriction list coming in March, so you might be watching this after the fact. We're not talking about Rebecca and Moria in this deck, and specifically because I think most builds don't run this anyways. I think there's just better things to do, even though these are like the 2 all-stars for the kind of black color right now in the game right now. But there also might get hit in the next little bit, so we'll see if that's the case. But I've been doing a lot of research from Japanese lists that have been topping and winning events in their version of the OP10 meta too, so they don't play these cards. Even though Rebecca is a Dressrosa card, there is kind of just better things to do from what this can do, so most people aren't playing it. But if you guys want to play this combo, you can do it as well, but it is a conscious choice to not talk about it, mostly because I think there are, again, better things to do with it. But if you guys want to play this, I'm not going to stop you. Bandai might though in a couple weeks, but we'll see when we get there. So anyway, some consistency cards. Most of these cards, Rebecca and the Colosseum, are from OP04, from the Rebecca leader, but these are cards that you can still use in this Usopp deck. And the newest card is this Leo here. So on play, you may rest one of your leaders or stages. If your leader is Usopp, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal up to 2 cards other than Leo that have the Dressrosa type, and put them in your hand, and then put the rest at the bottom of your deck and trash 1 card. So essentially, it's a draw 2, trash 1, if you want to think of it that way, but it's a little bit better since it finds your Dressrosa cards, which most cards in our deck are Dressrosa. So that is, I think, very helpful for us. It's also good for getting more cards out of our hand that, 1, need to be in the trash, or 2, we just can't do anything with. So, for example, we always want to establish 1 Colosseum, since not only being able to attack is really strong, but there are effects that you use to tap the Colosseum, and if you do so, you get your additional effect. For example, Leo here. Like turn 1, you can play Leo, tap your leader, it's not a big issue. But after that, you kind of still want to be able to attack with your leader at the same time. So I think that's important. Leo's been very good. You can also bring it back in a couple ways, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but very good. And your opponent won't want to remove this early game, because then you're just giving your opponent a free draw too with the Usopp effect. So that's really strong. I think this is a really good consistency card, and you pretty much have to run 4 in most builds for it. So, and then we got some pretty good 4 costs as well. We do have the Zoro. So this this is a Dressrosa Supernova Straw Hat crew. On play, you can rest up to one of your Dressrosa type leaders, our stages, which we mentioned earlier. KO up to one of your opponent's cost 4 or lower characters, and then you get to put 2 cards from your deck into your trash. All these effects are good. This is one of the best cards, I think, in the deck. It is a little bit rough that it doesn't have counter, because that is something that you'll see a lot of cards in this deck. You have so many good effects that you want to run, but you have to balance it with the cards that do and don't have counter. And because of that, too, since we are so dependent on having a hand size of 5 or less to get our additional draws, we get really negatively impacted by having too many cards in hand that we can't counter with, which is important. But this Zoro is great, and there are some combos we can do with it later. I also didn't mention it, but we are moderately bad at putting cards into our trash organically for this deck, right? But Rebecca and Leo is really good at it, and also Zoro is helpful for you. Being able to fill up your trash is important for this deck, and compared to something like Gecko Moria or Rob Lucci, where their leader effects just inherently make your trash pretty big by like turn 5 or 6, we kind of need to make sure that we keep track of our effects and make sure to put more cards in there just to be able to do some of our later effects as well. So next we got Cavendish, which this card is really good on 4 if you played your Coliseum previously. I've had some hard times like getting value from this card, though. It's just like a little bit clunky, and we'll talk about it with like the 7 cost Rebecca as well. But the when attacking once per turn to draw 2 and trash 1 is fantastic, especially since we do have the Coliseum. So for whatever reason, if like early game you have the Coliseum out and they have like a rested character to attack into, this Cavendish can do a lot of value. Set up your hand and be able to get rid of some bricks in your hand too. So we're pretty consistently wanting to get to our Rebecca on 7 or 8 Dawn immediately with our full combos. So this card helps us get there, and isn't a bad card to play off the Rebecca either. So most people are playing it 4 copies. I feel like sometimes it's a bit clunky at that, but I do definitely run this card. And then we got Frankie, which is a blocker as well. Blocker on KO. Play up to 1 cost 3 or lower Dressrosa type character rested from your trash. So this is really good. Blockers get a lot more value in this deck too, because if you're able to block an attack, you have 5 or less cards in your hand, then you get to draw the card and also block the attack, which is really strong. This can also play off Rebecca or Leo, which you will be able to use their effects if you have them set up. So that's very strong. So not only do you get a block, but you get to draw a card, and then you get to draw some more cards off Rebecca and Leo. So I think this Frankie's good, not only as a blocker, but being able to set up some additional plays. There's also chances where you can use it to play like a 2 cost or 3 cost blocker. You don't get the immediate block that turn, but then you get to set it active on the next turn. Your opponent kind of has to answer it, and then if they don't, you get rewarded for it. So it's a really good card. I like this card in the deck. Next up, you've got the Rebecca and Kiro super rares from the set, and these are the 2 super rares you want for your Usopp leader. I think you play both at 4 copies. They're very strong for the archetype in general, but the Rebecca's like a little bit weirdly worded, and I want to make sure you guys understand how it works. But it's a 7-drop 4K. It has counter, which is nice, and on play, if there's a cost 8 or greater character in play, you get to draw 1 card. So this is a 7 cost, but if you have the Usopp leader, you make it an 8 cost because it bumps up all of your Dressrosas on the field by 1, so this counts for itself. And then reveal up to 2 cost 7 or lower Dressrosa type characters other than Rebecca from your hand. Play one of them as active, then if the other has a cost of 4 or lower, play it as rested. So that almost sounds like you can play 2 7 costs off this card, which is incorrect. You choose 2 7 or lowers, you play 1 active, and then you play a 4 or less rested. So it's a little bit tricky on how the wording works for it. I'm not sure if this is going to be addressed at all. This is from the Asian website with their English translation, so there might be a better translation that comes out the way, but it just feels like a little bit clunky to me. The better way to say it is that you kind of get to play 7 or lower active and then a 4 or lower rested from your hand that has the Dressrosa type. So I think that's strong. It's from your hand too, so it's kind of like a Gecko Moria in itself that's an archetype, but also since it's Dressrosa, there's some weird times that if you have the Coliseum out, you play this out and then you can attack this into like a 1-drop or 2-drop that maybe they attacked with earlier. We also have Kiros here, so it's a 7-drop 9K. On play, return a cost 5 or lower character to its owner's hand, which is really strong. And again, if you do have the Coliseum out, it can attack into something, which 7-drop 9K is incredible stats. Like, these are vanilla stats for a card, and this is just very, very strong. So just being able to contend into something with the Coliseum, and the next turn swing with the 9K is very, very good. So I think these cards are great, and they definitely need to be used in an Usopp deck as well. So next up, though, we do have our Gear 4 Luffy's I do want to mention. So we got All Reliable. This is the one from OP04, which you can still play in this deck, and we are playing the Coliseum, so there are some situations where you can use this as like a removal off of the Rebecca too, since this is a 7 cost. We also have the 6 cost Monkey D. Luffy, so once per turn, this character cannot be KO'd by your opponent's effects. I kind of wish that it was like once per turn it can't be removed by effects, so including KO'd, since there are just a lot of ways to bounce this back into hand or bottom deck or whatever. But regardless, it's an okay card. I don't see a lot of people use it, but it's a 6-drop 7k. It does have 1k counter, and when attacking, you may place 3 cards from your trash to the bottom of your deck in any order. Then if your opponent has 5 or more cards in their hand, your opponent trashes 1 card from their hand. So honestly, this might be a better card in specifically Rebecca, since this is a card that helps you like go kind of neutral on card advantage, which is kind of what Rebecca wants to do. But Usopp can definitely use it as well. It just feels like a little bit clunkier, I feel like. And I wish it was just once per turn it can't be KO'd by effects in general, since there are some like self-KO effects in Dressrosa. So being able to have this 6-drop 7k that you can, use with some of your KO effects to be able to make this them work, I think would be like a little bit less clunky for Rebecca too. But hand destruction is kind of like a weird concept in this game. We don't have a lot of it, but and it generally hasn't been super good yet, but when it does work, it is really obnoxious and can kind of get into some like checkmate situations, which is why like it has so much cost of your opponent having to have 5 or more cards in hand, having to make them like bottom deck 3 cards from your trash, which is a lot. But it's an interesting card. I'm sure there might be some builds for it later, but I'm not convinced with it quite yet. So I don't recommend running this. If anything, you play the 7 cost, since it does have some removal and it can be like a really good game ender at the end of the game too. So there we go. Some quick Rebecca combos. There's way more. This is just some example ones, but off the Rebecca, we can play something like the Kyros and the Zoro. Both these cards have really good removal, which is really nice as well. Luffy can be the same thing. Also, if we have like One-Legged Soldier, which is the Dressrosa cost reduction, but we can also play like Tempest Kick, we can play Suru, we can play Ice Age, whatever. We can pretty easily use some combos where we get the reduction of something. Zoro just gets the clean KO of it. Our Kyros can get, with Ice Age, Kyros can bounce anything back into hand, which is really, really strong in those situations. So I think that's something that's worth mentioning for these, is that you can have these cost reductions and go from there. Then there's also Sabo. We didn't go over it, but it's a 2k that's a 4-drop that it offers protection by bouncing this to your own hand when something would get KO'd. So I think that's something that's really strong for if you want to be able to play Kyros and Sabo and just have like some defense. You can do that. I think it's like a little bit easy to remove this Sabo in its own way, but it's something that works for the archetype, and it's just a 2k that you can search, which is really good. So there we go. And then wrapping up before we get to the deck list, there's just a lot of good events that exist for black and blue in this game. I think the best one for you guys generically is Red Rock, just being able to have bottom deck removal when you already can establish a board. Generally, Red Rock is good in decks that already have board pressure, and so if you're ahead on board, you get rid of their big target, and then you can just pressure with all the stuff that you still have. So being able to use Rebecca, be able to get like Kyros and a Zoro out, and then afterwards, if they play a big boss monster, you can just Red Rock it. Feels really good. We have other stuff like your Gum Gums, we have Tempest Kicks, we have Hound Blaze, which we can still use in this deck, and just a bunch of others. So I don't really have like super good recommendations for them right now. I think that's going to be something where people are going to discover which kind of events they feel are better for decks like this. But there's just a lot. There's just a lot that I think like blue and black again has such a good interaction of removal, where blue has the best removal in the game, but it's usually kind of balanced by the fact that it's that lower cost, and then like the black cards let you reduce the cost of things so you can get things in range for your blue events, which is again just very, very strong. So make sure to check some out, make sure to make your own decisions for it, and let's go to our example deck lists. All right, we've got 2 quick deck lists for you guys, and these can be found on my website, Eggman Events. I have my OP10 section already open, which one I have this deck list table, which goes over all the deck lists I've been able to find for the Asian meta. The one we're going over today is Marco's Usopp, which was able to get first place at the Asia Finals in January, so make sure to check that out. But we also do have a bunch of other deck lists for a bunch of other leaders in the format. And then we also have my own build, which if you go to the staff and team deck list, you can find that there. I have my own version of Usopp that I used at the end of my stream from my most recent stream with it. So, but this is Marco's version, and again, this is I think a pretty standard way to build how this deck works. We are using a good amount of our 1-drops. We got the Rebecca's and Leos. We have the One-Legged Soldier for able to get some reduction and also be in the Dressrosa type. Dressrosa honestly just has like a lot of good 2Ks that exist. So Bart is really great. Sometimes just having a blocker is good. Being able to say like, oh, I play the 2-drop Ideo and then the Bart, and then make it so Generally, your opponent has to attack into one of these. We get the card draw off our Usopp effect, so that's very strong, I think, in those scenarios. Sabo, we mentioned earlier too. I do like the Frankie, and Frankie can be very good value-wise. Not only is it a blocker, but then if it gets KO'd, you get to one, get a draw from your Usopp, and then you can either play Rebecca or Leo, or another blocker, which if your opponent doesn't interact with immediately, you get another blocker next turn, which is really strong. So other than that, we are 4-drops in Zoro and Cavendish. We do have the Rebecca, the 7-drop Luffy, the Kyros, and then we also do run the King Kong gun, which is great for just ending the game. It doesn't have to be played on the 7-cost Luffy, but giving something plus 6k power is very strong. And then lastly, we got Red Rock and the Coliseum, which I think is a mandatory 4 of. You feel so bad in the games that you don't find this card, and we do have a good amount of ways to discard cards and cycle them that I think you're not too worried about it either. So this is Marco's list. I think it's pretty straightforward, but it's very strong, and I recommend it if you're starting to try the archetype out. This is a great deck list to start out. And lastly, we've got my version of Usopp, which I used earlier this month on my live stream as well. And the things you'll probably notice is I did take out the 7-cost Luffy, as well as I'm only running 2 copies of the Cavendish. I just find like this card can be like a little bit clunky at times, like the fact you can play it off Rebecca, but the fact that also you don't really get the immediate value from it because it's usually played in rest, I thought was really rough. So I've been really enjoying this 5-cost Sabo in my decks, though. The fact that it's a blocker is really relevant. It means that you can get some spots where you get some defense. The fact that you get to filter through your hand is really, really nice. So if you want to go odd curve to be able to play Rebecca on curve, Sabo on 5 feels really great. Also, you can still attack with this as a 5-drop 6k into things, which is good. You can't play this off Rebecca off the 4-cost or less, but there are also just sometimes, you know what, I play Sabo and then I play like Zoro off of the Rebecca. I get the cycle I need, and I get the removal of something with the Zoro effect, which is really strong, and I get an active blocker, which is still great for us. So I think that kind of stuff is still relevant for this. I think Sabo's is still really strong, and the cycle that you get is something that I think is a little underrated for it. So other than that, I am playing Suru just for some additional cost reduction off of 2k, and I'm also playing like 2 copies of Red Rock. Sometimes I want to play this card at 3 copies. It's very, very good and helps us into some matchups like Blackbeard a lot of the time. And I would say that this deck is a more consistent version of it, and we're not playing as many like non-counters as I think like other versions of this build too. So that helps me, and that's something that I think is good for the deck. But I also think that it is, the ceiling for how good this deck is a little bit lower because of removing some of our like late game power at a lot of times. So it's kind of what your own decision is. I've been enjoying this build, but I'm sure you guys will have your own builds as well, and I highly encourage that too. So those are 2 builds. We're going to go over 2 example games, and let's check them out. All right, we've got 2 games for you guys that were from a recent live stream of mine. If you want to find the full one, you can find it linked to the description. But the first one we do have against Doflamingo, we end up going second. And we unfortunately don't have the stage yet, so we're going to use the Leo effect to hopefully find it, and we do. So we get the 7-cost Rebecca and the stage there, and we're going to just play out the stage after discarding a card from our hand, which is going to be the Ideo, which 2-drop blockers are going to not be super good when Dofi can just keep bouncing them back to our hand. So we're going to see what they do next. They have 3 Dawn. They're going to use the Teach there, so they're going to be able to set up their leader. Attack 7k, get the Weevil, which is a little bit scary, but we do have the Cavendish, which this is probably the best matchup for this card, just because we do usually have somewhere to attack into every turn, and the fact that we are a 5-cost due to our leader effect just makes it a little bit tricky for the removal. So we do just attack in the leader, just give them a 1 hit to go down to 4, but we've got a pretty chunky hand of 7 cards, which maybe we should be a little bit afraid of putting, but I don't think they're going to play it that early either, so especially since they did discard 1. So they're going to start off with 8, and because of that, we are just going to take the damage. And if we had some 2Ks, I'd think about it, but we still don't have any 2Ks in hand, which is a little bit scary, but we're just going to give them 3 1Ks and pass from there. So we do have 5 right now. We're going to get the blocker, which is going to help us out. We're going to attack the Cavendish into, I guess we're going to start with the Croc just to make sure that like if we need to remove we'd rather remove 1 card than, attempt the Weevil there. Get 1 more draw as well. And then we're going to play out the blocker and pass, which, again, it is a 5-cost blocker using the leader effect, so they can't just Trafalgar Law bounce it back, which is actually pretty nice. So we do have like a mediocre setup for Rebecca next turn, too, with the Kyros. No copy of Zoro, though, so that's like the one that we are missing. But they're going to go wide with the Jinbei and Boa there. Going to be able to put a Dawn onto their leader and attack 7k once again, which is quite good. But honestly, just having the Weevil out and just having continual things to attack into is really nice. And we have this kind of weird thing where we have too many cards in our hand to be able to get the effect from the blocker, but I think we are just going to, discard 3 cards just because we'd rather be at 2 life, and when they attack, we're going to block with this. We're going to draw from there, and then we're going to be able to use the effect there. And so we still don't have Zoro, which is like a little bit unfortunate, but we are going to be able to get 2 2Ks, which will help. But I was really hoping to find that Zoro. We got one more draw, so maybe we'll find it. And we'll see if this top deck helps us get there. But and it is the Zoro that we've been looking for most of this game. So technically, I guess we had more draws since we did have the Cavendish as well. But we're going to start off with the Rebecca draw 1. We're going to play out the Kyros, and then we're going to play out the Zoro as well. So Zoro's effect is going to tap the stage to get rid of the Boa. We're going to be able to bounce, I guess, the Boa back to hand. I'm not really sure what's the best card for it. Maybe the Jinbei. Maybe the Weevil. Everything just kind of stinks, but we're going to choose the Weevil instead. We're going to go 5k, 6k with our leader first, just to make sure that they don't hit like something to bounce that back, and then 6k with our Usopp. And we're kind of in a good spot at this point. I do think like this is one of our kind of better matchups. We do have 5 in hand when they use the Gravity Blade, so we get the additional draw. And they do have like a little bit more pressure with the Teach, since we did, fill up their hand with cards once again. But they're going to play out the Jinbei for an active Weevil, which is kind of unfortunate. We're going to give them 2k, 2k, since we finally find our 2ks after missing them for most of this game, and then another 2k there. So we've got a pretty good like control hand here. We could also just maybe go for game since they have 2 life and we have 3 damage, but we'll see what we're feeling here. But it's getting pretty close. We're using the Perona look, and we find another Kyros off of our Rebecca. This is pretty good for us. So we're going to be able to use the effect to bounce back the Weevil. We get our attack off the Colosseum into the Jinbei as well. We're just going to attack into the Jinbei too, and then we're going to go a simple 5 and 6 to the leader. So technically we could lose here. They do have 3 attacks, and one of them being Teach, but having a second copy of Kyros is pretty rough for them, and it's going to be tough for them to be able to stabilize from there. So let's see. We're going 7k. We're going to be able to play the Jinbei off the top, use the Moria to get back the Boa, which we're going to just take the damage. And this is kind of like some of the issue too, is that we have so many cards in hand that don't have counter. That's a little bit tricky, but they're going to play Jinbei with Boa also. And I don't know, they probably should put 3 Dawn on the Teach just to be able to get an attack with it. But yeah, they're going to go for it. And they can, if they want, bump it up a little bit more. Yeah, 8k there. They're going to have to take it. And they give us another Zoro, which is just better than the additional copy that we had for that. So now we got some really good numbers. We're going to go 7. We're going to go 9. And we're going to go 9. And even without the, if we had 2 less Dawn, after playing the Zoro, we would have been fine. But it was in a good spot, and we were able to kind of stabilize and get that game. So pretty close, though. And then we've got Teach, which is one of the bullies, I think, for this meta as well. This can be one of our rougher matches, especially since we just hit a Red Rock off the Rebecca to the trash there. So we're going to get the 2k off that. But not having a Red Rock of our 2 in rotation kind of stinks for us in a lot of ways. We also don't play the 7-cost Luffy in this build. This game is off the build that I personally run, and it does get a little bit of a worse matchup since the 7-cost Luffy is really good for punishing active mode 5-drop Kuzans, or also kind of pressuring a Burgess early in the game, just so they kind of have to defend it and gets that value. But we do top deck the Colosseum, which is really good for us. We're going to go 5k into the leader. And we're going to play out this 2-drop blocker, which again is really good in this deck for being able to just get some early value from there, which is nice. And not only get out of an attack, but draw for it too. So yeah, draw off them getting the pop off the Shiru. And then we're going to I think we got to get rid of a 2k, which we're going to get rid of the Shiru. So they're going to set up the stage, get rid of a Von Augur, and then pass to us at 5. And they don't use their leader effect, which is good for us too. So we're going to go 6 here, and then we're going to be able to use the Zoro to get rid of this by using the effect on the on play, and then we'll pass from there. Yeah, but Teach has such a big hand right now. I think they have 8 cards in hand due to the, compared to the 4 that we currently have, but they are down to 3 life. I'd likely take any additional damage here as well. But the other thing to mention is that, at this point, this is kind of how you want to play Usopp. You always want to have like 3 or 4 cards in hand and make it so like if they want to remove one of your cards, you get the card draw from it. You have such good recursion that you can be like a little bit greedy with like countering out of something with a couple of 1Ks instead of using a 2K kind of thing. So they're attacking 5. We're just going to take it, and we do get the Rebecca here, so they kind of have to be able to play their effect to be able to, like, they have to use their teach effect or they get super punished for it. They are playing the Burgess too, and then likely they're gonna use the discard effect, which is really unfortunate because we are so dependent on that as well. We're gonna go 6 into leader first, just in case they have anything out of their life. We're gonna go 5 in there as well. We're gonna play the Kyros with no on play, but it's still a 7-drop 9K body. And then I think we're gonna just attack that into Lafayette, just in case like there's no reason to have like the Rebecca attack. They're not going to be able to pressure a 9K very easily either. And I think this is just fine for what it is. So we do have 5 cards in hand too. So if they try to remove one of my bodies, we get a card draw also, which is strong. And they are at the 8 Dawn. And something that I will mention too is that something that we generally get an additional card draw every turn, but also the fact that they have to discard 1 card every turn to make sure that we don't get like a Rebecca combos feels really, really good for this deck. It just means like if we get to the late game, we can kind of out-resource them very good because they have to pretty much discard a card every turn, it seems. But they're going to use their effect. They're going to discard a Kuzan to look top 3 with their stage. And looking quite heavily at these cards here. And I'm going to get a stronger 2K off of this. Still has the 8 Dawn available. And I'm curious if they're going to be able to remove anything on my board right now. All right, still thinking on what their best play is to... Yeah, this is just kind of a weird spot because we do have a lot of pressure. They're at 2 life right now, and the fact that they're only at 8 Dawn instead of the 10 for Teach makes a big difference. And we're able to go kind of wide, but they're gonna use their lead effect, discarding the Liberation to get that active. So attacking into the Zora, we're gonna get rid of it and take the card draw. They're gonna play the Kuzan to play out another copy of their Burgess, which is pretty scary, if I'm being honest. And I think they're going to pass it back to us. Yeah, that card can be very terrifying. We do have answers to it if we find our red rocks, but we just don't. We just did not find an option for that. So we're going to start with a 9K. We're going to go, I guess, big number, which maybe we should have just gone like wider instead of taller here. But I felt like if we set them down to 1, they're in like a bit of a rough spot here. Yeah, so they're at 0. We're gonna just pass there. We have the Cavendish, and if we find a red rock, there's a good chance we just win the game, which would be very, very strong for us. But the fact that they have the Burgesses set up, 10-drop Teach would be devastating, and the fact that we haven't found a red rock yet is kind of rough for us. All right, so thinking on their next play here, they do have 10 Dawn with, I believe, again, 8 cards in hand, so nothing, nothing to shake a stick at. There's definitely a lot for them. And if they, honestly, if they just play out Teach and attack into leader, putting us down to 1 is almost guaranteed, I think, at that point. Like, we could maybe set ourselves to 2 if we really want to be defensive with it, but they're already 8K Burgesses, and that is just some really good numbers for them. Because we can like 1K with the Rebecca and then use double toy soldiers to get out of it. But we'll see. So they get Doc Q off of their stage here. And I mean, they could also have like a different route where they just kind of bully my heroes, but they have to have like in the back of their mind, like, if I just hit them with a red rock, which kind of what my previous play of just like going tall indicated, what is their best play, right? They don't have like a really good play off of that, I feel like. So yeah, definitely the think tank. I think that's something that Teach players are going to do. Deciding to finally play the 10-drop, we're going to use the effect to stop my Kyros, which makes sense. We're going to immediately 1k with the Frankie. We're going to double 2ks with the toy soldiers, and then they're going to hit us with an 8k, which will get the job done, but you know, we're in a bit of a buff spot. And I think we should have used the Rebecca instead of the Frankie. And man, this is what I mentioned. It's so tough. It's so tough for us to get good numbers in this deck at times. But we do have like another Cavendish where you can play it and just attack into the Burgess to get like another draw too, which is strong. Yeah, we get a blocker, which is cool. But yeah, no copies of the what Red Rock is pretty devastating. So we're just going to be able to play out our Frankie. We're going to have to hope that they don't have cards to win the game. But which is, you know, only one blocker is pretty scary with the board that they have with 2 Burgesses, which are currently at 9k and can easily turn into 10k as well. So honestly, the best kind of bet is just hope that the first card of our life is maybe like the Red Rock to get rid of the other one. Depending on their swings, see if they can interact with the Frankie too, but this is looking pretty rough for us. You know, 2 9Ks, a 12K without any Dawn attached to our only 2 life, and 5 cards in hand with 3 of them without counters, which again is my least favorite thing about this deck, is that you will always, like, it is very rare for your entire hand to have counter. It's very easy to count that my opponent has like 1 or 2 dead cards in their 5-card hand if they're playing Usopp, if not more. Like I've had like 4 or 5 discs. They stuck with Zoros, Kyroses, Cavendishes. There's just so many good cards that you want to run in this deck that don't have that counter, which is pretty scary. So definitely thinking out here. We did speed this up, but they are in the think tank on honestly what I would say is maybe a pretty automatic play if you have any removal for the Frankie at this point. Because even if you're just playing like 10-drop Teach is good, but you end up using the effect to find a Shiru off the stage, and then we can't use any on play abilities. So now these are 9Ks still. Additional discards to make it a 10K for these Burgesses. And even without removal of the Frankie, like I'm in a bad spot. So they're going to go 10k. We're going to take the damage just in case it is the Red Rock to be able to get rid of the other one. Which, you know, we could go down to 6. But, you know, at the same time, like we could have played something to get like the double draw here. But I think we're fine. They're down to 3 cards left in hand. They're going to go the other 10. We're not going to take that damage. And yeah, look, we just have like so many dead cards in hand at this point. Yeah, there's just really nothing we can do. Like the best bet is like we block with like if they do their Dawn math like wrong, because right now they have a 5 and a 12, and so with that they can make it a 13 and 14. And we only have the 1 blocker, so like we can block out of something. Also, if they swing 8k with their leader, we have to block it, which is really sad. In a hand of 7 cards, right? Like we have just so many cards in our hand right now, which is pretty scary. But yeah, they're going to go big 11. We're going to get the block. We're going to find out the... it doesn't really matter. We could have played the Leo, get the draw too, but you know, with the numbers they had, they were just going to get there. So that's it for us. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know this was a bit of a slower game, but I also want to show, like, you know, there are games you lose with this, and that it is not always easy to be able to get the pieces you need or have our hand have counters at a given time. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If there's any other leaders you want me to go over, please let me know. I'd love to give you guys resources for this set, and that's going to be it for me. So again, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.